What is a transgender person? And what does it mean to be transgender? In this video, we look at some facts about the term transgender and what it means to be transgender, and try and explore how and why this takes place, and look at the impacts these things, whether positive or negative, might have. I'd like to start by first looking at the definition of the term. Merriam-Webster defines transgender as of relating to or being a person whose gender identity differs from the sex the person had or was identified as having at birth. Or of relating to or being a person whose gender identity is the opposite of the sex the person had or was identified as having at birth. Let's take a look at part of that first definition, the part that says gender identity. Merriam-Webster states that gender identity is a person's internal sense of being male, female, some combination of male and female, or neither male nor female. Confused yet? Okay, the first part of the definition of gender identity says a person's internal sense. So what does that mean? A person's sense of self, as described by psychology, is defined as the way a person thinks about and views his or her traits, beliefs, and purpose within the world. So it's suffice to say that a transgender person defines their gender identity based on an internal sense that they are of the opposite gender or neither gender. The problem with saying any of these things is that there is a very small amount of scientific data, none of which is conclusive and none of which that's backing any of these claims, except the fact that they feel something internally. There have been psychological studies done on something called dysphorias. There are several studies in this field, one of them pertaining to gender. Gender dysphoria, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, is defined as a marked incongruence between their experienced or expressed gender and the one they were assigned at birth. Children or adolescents who experience this turmoil cannot correlate to their gender expression when identifying themselves within traditional societal binary male and female roles, which may cause cultural stigmatization. This can further lead to relationship conflicts with family, peers, friends in various aspects of their daily lives, and lead to rejection from society, interpersonal conflicts, symptoms of depression and anxiety, substance use disorders, a negative sense of well-being and poor self-esteem, and increased risk of self-harm and suicidality. The development of gender to its assigned sex in childhood may be influenced by interaction with the child's temperament, parents' qualities, and their dynamic relationship. Young boys are not expected to be effeminate, and young girls are expected to be nurturing, warm, and sensitive. These behaviors are also congruent with cultural and biological norms. Children usually start identifying gender between 3 to 5 years of age, although there might be discrepancies. Cross-gender activities are carefully studied in children with gender dysphoria, although they have been increasingly incongruent in the last few decades. And there have been genetic studies done on people with gender dysphoria. The researchers sequenced the exome of 14 female to male and 16 male to female people who identify as transgender. In the round up the usual suspects approach used for various type of genome-wide studies, the investigators began with variants of a logical group of candidate genes, which regulate steroid metabolism in the brain during development, and are rare, fewer than 1 in 10,000 individuals in the general population. A database called EXAC compiles gene variant frequencies from many research groups. The team whittled down 120,000 genetic variants of possible interest among the participants, then selected 30 variants representing 20 genes for further investigation. 11 of the variants changed one amino acid in the encoded protein to another. This is known as a missense mutation. And 9 variants were deemed pathogenic for neurological development and/or sex steroid metabolism, adding up to the 20 of interest. Pathogenic is genetics jargon for a gene variant that is capable of causing diseases, although this doesn't mean that transgender identity is a disease. All people contain pathogenic genes. Most are recessive and present only in one copy, so are never noticed. The researchers are still resequencing the candidate genes for confirmation, but so far only 2 variants are present in 2 copies in any one gene. And Dr. Thiessen, the leader of the research team in question, quotes a caution. Our research is still preliminary in nature, and we are a very long way from knowing what, if any, significance our findings have. The DNA of any randomly chosen individuals will contain unique variants, and as a result, identifying variants alone is not sufficient to make any claims regarding causation of or even relation to a given phenotype. Therefore, we have not yet identified any particular genes or genetic variants that we know to be involved in the development of transgender identities, though that is the eventual goal of our research. So the conclusion is pretty clear. We identified genetic variants in 20 genes that may play a role in transgender identity. But it is still a powerful statement, for it lends justification to the idea that identifying as transgender is neither a mental illness nor a lifestyle choice. It is a variation on the theme of being human, as we all are in one way or another. So if we are all our own variation of being human, as a lifestyle choice, I don't think most people really care about other people's personal choices, unless it conflicts within their own variation of being a human in a negative way. Perhaps the level of acceptance within certain areas of society needs to be more scrutinized to achieve more acceptance from society as a whole. An example of an area that clearly needs more scrutinizing is competitive sports, particularly in mixed martial arts, where a transgender woman named Fallon Fox competed in fights against women, and in one fight would go on to fracture the skull of the opposing fighter. The opponent, Tamika Brents, went on to state after the fight, quote, "I've fought a lot of women, and have never felt the strength that I felt in a fight as I did that night. I can't answer whether it's because she was born a man or not, because I'm not a doctor. I can only say I've never felt so overpowered ever in my life, and I am an abnormally strong female in my own right. I still disagree with Fox fighting. In any other job or career, I say have a go at it, but when it comes to a combat sport, I think it just isn't fair." The participation of transgender and transsexual people in competitive sports is a controversial issue, particularly where athletes have gone through male puberty and are notably successful in women's sport, or represent a significant increased injury risk to female by birth competitors. Resistance to trans women competing in women's sports generally focuses on physiological attributes such as height and weight, or performance metrics such as speed and strength, and whether sustained testosterone suppression can adequately reduce any natural advantages of male body characteristics within a given women's sport. Regulations requiring that trans athletes compete against athletes of the same assigned sex at birth and requiring sex verification testing have been used. Proponents of such regulations regard them as necessary to ensure fair competition, while opponents regard them as discriminatory. There are examples of transgender males competing in men's sports and beating men, but never at a high enough level of the sport for it to be considered as an adequate representation of transgender men in men's sports. Another major factor to consider in the question of what is a transgender person is of course the biological aspect. In order for any species of mammal, which of course includes humans, to mate and produce offspring requires the sperm from a male and the egg from a female. This is a simple fact of nature. Without it, no species would have the ability to reproduce or have continued procreation. The most basic primal instincts that mammals have are the need to eat, reproduce, and survive. And the evolution and survival of any species is completely dependent on those things. Even with the ability to have gender reassignment surgery, a person still loses their ability to reproduce. And the ability to reproduce is a defining characteristic of continuity not only in mammals, but all species of life. But even with hormone therapy or gender reassignment surgery, it doesn't change the biological and genetic fact that a person is the gender they are assigned at birth. And this cannot simply be changed by an internal sense of gender identity. And I'd just like to add, this isn't just some transgender negativity video. It's just a video I made to try and help people understand more about the subject. I'm a firm believer in the idea that as grown adults, people should be able to be, think, and do whatever they want, as long as they don't try to force their ideas upon anyone else or have a negative effect on them. So is there any form of conclusion we can draw from all of this? Even though it is, and will continue to be a subject of debate, I think that based on the knowledge from the studies that are known and have been done so far, the only safe answer to the question of what is a transgender person is a person who could be diagnosed with gender dysphoria based on personal experiences as a child that led them to an opposite affirmation for their gender than the one they were assigned at birth. But maybe in the future we will learn more, and hopefully society can learn how to better accept it. But until then, we have to try and understand and accept the evidence in front of us. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then hit those subscribe and bell icons, and comment below if you have any ideas for future videos you'd like to see. And I'll see you in the next one.